You spent 4 years doing everything right. You studied, you interned, you built the resume, you practiced the interview answers in front of a mirror at 11 at night until they sounded natural. And then the offer came. And then you did the math. Rent, groceries, student loan payment, transportation, and somewhere in that spreadsheet, something stops adding up. The number in the offer letter is real, but the life it was supposed to buy, the one you were quietly promised, is somehow not. This is not a story about entitlement. This is not a pep talk about patience. This is about a system that was built deliberately and methodically to pay you less than your work is worth, and to make sure you don't notice until it's too late to negotiate. Let's start with a number. The average starting salary for a college graduate in the United States right now sits somewhere around $58,000 a year. That sounds reasonable, until you realize that in 1980, adjusted for inflation, the average starting salary was roughly equivalent to $61,000 in today's money. You read that correctly. After 45 years of economic growth, technological revolution, and a tripling of corporate profits, the entry-level worker makes less in real terms than their parents did stepping out of college. How is that possible? And more importantly, who decided that was acceptable? The answer involves something that most career counselors will never put in the curriculum. Here is how the entry-level labor market actually works, underneath the motivational posters and the LinkedIn congratulations. When a company hires you for your first job, they're not paying you for what you can do today. They are paying you for what they expect to teach you, minus the risk they assume by hiring someone unproven. That risk gets subtracted from your paycheck every single month. Economists have a clean little term for this. They call it the compensating differential for human capital investment. In plain language, you are paying for your own training by accepting a lower wage. The company is the school. The tuition is the gap between what you produce and what you get paid. And here is where it gets interesting. In a fair version of this arrangement, the company invests in you, you become more valuable, and the wage catches up over time. That was more or less how it worked in the post-war decades. Companies had long planning horizons. They expected workers to stay. They built pension systems and promoted from within because it made financial sense. That model collapsed somewhere around the early 1980s. What replaced it was a philosophy that reshaped how corporations think about employees, and it came dressed in the language of efficiency. The idea was simple. Shareholders come first. Labor is a cost. Costs should be minimized. Between 1978 and 2023, CEO compensation in America rose by over 1,300%. The typical worker's pay rose by just over 18%. That is not a gap, that is a launch sequence. If your salary were a bicycle, your CEOs would be a private jet already crossing the Atlantic. But none of that is written in your offer letter. What is written in your offer letter is a number that was not arrived at by calculating your worth. It was arrived at by calculating the lowest number you probably would accept and then offering you slightly above it so you feel like you won the negotiation. There is a term for this in economics too. It is called monopsony power. It means a market where buyers of labor, employers, have enough market concentration to set wages rather than compete for them. And in field after field, from healthcare to tech to logistics, consolidation has handed that power to employers. The company does not need to collude with its competitors to keep your wages down. It just needs enough of those competitors to have disappeared through mergers and acquisitions that you have nowhere else to go. Your first salary is not just a number, it's a baseline, and it compounds. Most raises are given as percentages, 3% here, 5% in a good year, which sounds fine until you realize that 3% of 58,000 is a very different number than 3% of 80,000. The gap between a good starting salary and a mediocre one does not close over time, it widens. Researchers at the National Bureau of Economic Research studied lifetime earnings trajectories and found something stark. Workers who negotiate or land higher starting salaries accumulate dramatically more wealth over a 30-year career, not because they worked harder, but because the math of percentage-based raises is unforgiving. A worker who starts at $50,000 and gets 3% raises annually will earn roughly $2 million over 30 years. A worker who starts at $60,000 under the same conditions earns nearly $2.4 million. $400,000 compounded from a single negotiation you probably didn't even know you could have at 22. And the system, quietly, is counting on you not knowing that. There's also the credential inflation problem, which deserves about 30 seconds because it's genuinely absurd. In 1970, roughly 11% of Americans had a 4-year college degree. Today, it's closer to 38%. In 1970, a degree was a golden ticket. It signaled rarity. Today, it mostly signals that you weren't disqualified. The degree didn't get worse, it just became common. And when something becomes common, its wage premium shrinks, even if its price does not. You paid more for the ticket. The seat did not improve. The view stayed the same. Every graduation season, the messaging is consistent. Follow your passion, invest in yourself. The first job is just a stepping stone. Pay your dues, learn from the experience, the money will come. Some of that is true. Some of it is strategically true, meaning it's true enough to keep you from asking the harder questions while you're still in a position to ask them. Because here's what the hype doesn't tell you. The median number of years a millennial stays in their first job is about 14 months. They leave, they find something new, and they get a bump. That job-hopping premium, the salary increase from switching employers, averages somewhere between 10 and 20% compared to the 3 to 5% raise you get by staying loyal. The single most effective salary negotiation strategy available to most entry-level workers is to quit, which is an extraordinary indictment of how these systems are calibrated. So zoom out for a moment, because this is bigger than any one paycheck. When a generation enters the workforce underpaid relative to their expectations, relative to their debt, and relative to the cost of the life they were told to expect, something structural happens. They delay major purchases, they rent longer, they have fewer children, they save less, they carry debt into middle age. Between 2005 and 2023, the median age of first-time homebuyers in the United States rose from 31 to 35. That 4-year shift doesn't sound dramatic, but it represents trillions of dollars in delayed economic activity, altered family structures, and retirement trajectories that quietly become untenable. The underpayment of young workers is not a personal inconvenience. It's a slow structural tax on an entire generation that shows up everywhere except in the headline labor statistics that everyone quotes to tell you the economy's doing fine. None of this means the situation is hopeless. It does mean something uncomfortable. The system is not malfunctioning. It is calibrated. It is designed to minimize labor costs. It is designed to anchor expectations. It is designed to make underpayment feel normal. And the most dangerous part is not that it exists. It's that you enter it believing the number in the offer letter is a verdict on your worth, when it's really a reflection of leverage. 10 years from now, the next generation will walk into the same negotiation room. The only question is whether they will understand the rules of the game before signing the paper. Because systems don't correct themselves out of fairness. They correct when people understand them. And right now, very few people do.